let's get into some individual players. All right, because I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Mike. Let's talk, and we could extend this even to all the Miami pass catchers, but Jalen Waddle, because obviously we're dealing with the Skylar Thompson experience right now. So, what are we doing with Jalen Waddle if we have him?
This one's a little bit easier for me, just because I mean, he was an obvious sell guy for me, like all off season. I didn't really understand the hype because the production didn't really ever live up to it. As long as Tyreek was there, it was kind of going to be sporadic. I didn't even think he was good enough to be like a really good number two. Like if you kind of think about how Devontae Smith performs when AJ Brown's healthy, at least last year, uh, I didn't think Waddle was ever quite in that category, but he was definitely valued in there. I think now with this terrible situation that this whole team's in right now, like I'm pretty good just re-rolling Jalen Waddle for future draft capital and just seeing what happens. So I don't know if you could still get a first and a second out of Jalen Waddle, maybe. But I think a lot of leagues you might be able to target somebody who's kind of in that mid pack and kind of target one of those mid 25 first. And I can almost guarantee at this time next year, the dynasty market when this 25 rookie class comes in, whatever player that ends up being is going to be as valuable, if not more valuable, than Jalen Waddle. Just how the dynasty cycle goes. So Jalen Waddle is kind of like if you needed some red flags on to get off, I think this is a pretty good time just to go like, okay, I'm good. I'll let somebody else buy the hopium and I'll just kind of punt it until next year, and I'm probably gonna come out on top anyways.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for Jalen Waddle when you think of supply and demand. So there's always two sides of the coin. You got, I'm not playing for this year or I'm playing for this year. And so as a rebuilding team, I go and I look to buy Jalen Waddle for the future. All right. He's going to be tethered to, Tua Tagovailoa at worst. There is, an upside case for the wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game in 2022. But what am I going to give up? A mid to early second or better? That's pushing it, because in a 10 to 12 man league, that's a pretty coveted rookie pick. So we're giving up a lot of capital for somebody who, again, extenuating circumstances, but once again is not living up to the hype. And we see players that do this over and over. At a certain point, you got to accept that this is a volatile asset. And if he doesn't have the situation correct around him, it's going to be tough. So as a rebuilding team, I struggled to give up a mid-second plus, which is market value right now. It's what it's going to take. And on the flip side of it, if I'm a contending team, despite the fact, which I'll talk about later, that I believe Tyler Huntley is going to lead this team at some point, and that does increase my projection for the Miami offense. Jalen Waddle's not a guy you're targeting as a contender. If you're a serious contender, there are plenty of better options out there. So it's just I find myself in a Jalen Waddle purgatory. So if I'm holding him, I'm definitely putting him on the block, seeing who does want him on their team. But it's at a point in the market where you're gonna have to sell low, and that's a team by team decision whether or not you're willing to do that.
Yeah, this is a conundrum because like my instinct tells me, oh, like he's the value's down, like it's probably a buy. But, if I'm looking to buy, like I'm looking for immediate production for a win now team, which I'm not sure Jalen Waddle is going to give me. So it's purely a value move, which in the short term, I don't know if it helps you. Maybe in the long term, it helps you. So, like coming into this, like my instinct was, oh, I Jalen Waddle's a value. Like he's gone down on keep trade cut. Like the market's down on him. But yeah, like when you dig a few layers deeper, you're like, God, if I have him, I think I have to hold him, or if I, maybe I can shop him and maybe I can get that first plus. Like I think that would be a smash, honestly, if I got a 2025 first plus from, like you said, somebody who's in the middle of the pack, somebody who's trying to buy low on him. I think that's where I am. I was convinced coming in here like, oh, he's a buy, but now that I'm thinking about it and in the moment, I'm like, well, damn, like if I'm a contending team, I don't know how valuable he is to me really because of the quarterback situation, and it's also so strange because we don't know if Tua's ever going to play again, and we don't know what their plan for quarterback is this year. They could sign Ryan Tannehill tomorrow, or they could stick with Skylar Thompson or Snoop Huntley or Scoop Huntley or whatever his name is. And we don't know how that's going to go. So it's just such an uncertain situation. My instinct would be if you have them, like I need at least the first, plus probably something extra, a little something on top of that. But you're probably stuck holding them for now because I don't know if you're gonna get, like, maybe you can get that. I don't know. That's just my instinct. But yeah. Anyway, like this next player. You and Adam kind of had a huge debate as I was watching your stream. I was fascinated by this conversation. If you haven't seen it, you got to go check it out on South Harmon's YouTube channel. Bryce Young right now. Is he a buy, sell, or a hold for you?
If you're not a contender, he's a buy. His market is so down. Yeah, and I was trying to explain it to Adam. I was also drinking, so I understand his frustration. Maybe he had a bad day. I don't know what it was. But there's no reason if you're not a contending team to not go out and buy Bryce Young at his price. And it's not going to cost you if you're a rebuilding team. I mean, it's not costing you your second. It's not like you're paying an early second for him. You might have to give your third. That's it. Somebody's going to look at it and go, oh, it's a 303 or it's a 302. I will pay that for a dude who's going to start games. Like, people are paying more than that right now for Andy Dalton, who's had one game, and who also, I mean, the last time we fully saw Andy Dalton play football, he was terrible, other than this past week. Like, this is a guy, if you want to talk about Mr. September, is Mr. September. At some point, he's going to turn back into the Andy Dalton Red Rifle pumpkin that we all know and love. And just because he's playing games and starting right now, that's where his market is. Like, people are going to ask for a second for their Andy Dalton if they want to move off him. You don't think Bryce Young's ever going to get back to that when he's starting games? Maybe it's not for Carolina. Maybe it's for another team. Maybe it's a better situation. But if I got to go pay a third now, I can guarantee when Bryce is starting games, I'm getting a second out of him at least. And then you add on to the fact all these redemption stories that we've seen over the last couple of years at the quarterback position. I mean, Baker Mayfield, we wrote him off, dead. Jared Goff, after the Rams trade, dead. Now these are guys you're sitting there and you're like, it probably cost me a first to go get one of these guys. And it might cost a little bit more depending on league market, what the quarterback situation is for some of these teams, how likely they are to move them. There is redemption story after redemption story of quarterbacks. And we're talking about a guy who played one season and a couple games, was the number one overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winner out of Alabama, and now he's dead? Like, it's over? I refuse to believe it. So I'm going to go and buy Bryce Young. And any team that's not contending, I'm not wasting my assets on a contending team because I'm going to need them for other things. Like, if I'm a contending team and I was like, oh, I want to make a speculative buy because it's dynasty and long term, I think I'm doing it wrong. Like, I'm worried about 2024 and 2024 only in all reality on my contending teams. So rebuilders, though, geez, you're not in it, go buy Bryce Young. Or if you're one of those teams that, like, hey, you might have been sitting there thinking you're a contender, you're 0-3, like, maybe this is the little push or the little nudge you get. Like, okay, well, I'm just gonna kind of relax here a little bit, and we'll see what happens the rest of the year. But maybe this is the kind of moves that you make, is to go buy some of these players on the super low, hope they pay off later in the season, and maybe it propels you back into contention. But if it doesn't, you're setting yourself up better for next year anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that's you're on the right side of history there. You know, we're seeing too many scenarios right now where coaching and scheme in a good situation just fixes what we believe to be a broken quarterback. Help Malik Willis looks like one of the, more capable starters in the NFL in terms of just handling an NFL game, thanks to Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers right now. So he's going to start a game at some point. It's a fragile position where, we're seeing guys like Malik Willis start. We have an emergency third quarterback for, Tim Boyle played football on Sunday. Bryce Young will start for somebody. And I with Dave Canales so early on and this benching happening, I'm inclined to believe that he might not even be in Carolina for very long. So We're already getting leaked, whether it's true or not, that calls are coming in for trade. So I don't think you're going to be in Carolina purgatory very long. So you're going to be able to see what the future holds for Bryce Young pretty quickly. So he's actually one of my favorite pies right now.
Yeah, this is actually kind of crazy because I looked it up as you guys were talking. Bryce Young on Keep Trade Cut, he's quarterback 32. As you can imagine, his values plummeted like 100 spots in the last 30 days. So 100 and what did I say, 182, 181. Andy Dalton's sitting at player 204 right now. There's a world where you could trade Andy Dalton for Bryce Young straight up. Like, that's not a crazy trade offer right now. So, yeah, and just like not to get into the, Adam versus Michael debate, but that was must see television. But he was trying to, like, I understood his point too, because he was saying, well, what if you have to get something for him? But that's kind of blowing past the tenet of Dynasty, where it's like, well, this is going to cost me Andy Dalton. Maybe it's going to cost me a third. Okay, I lose my third to take a chance on Bryce Young, who, let's face it, he's probably going to get another opportunity somewhere else because he was a number 1 overall pick. We're seeing these quarterback resurgence. This is the year of the quarterback resurgence. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Malik Willis. Like, I think I'm missing one in there somewhere, but like, and then on the other side of the coin, like Patrick Mahomes is like right down there in true quarterback rating with like Daniel Jones or some stat like that I was looking at the other day. Like, he's not having a great start to the season statistically, but they're winning, so it's fine. This is, I think this is a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer buy. And you're holding on to him if you have him, and you're hoping he gets traded to the Jets next year and when Aaron Rodgers retires or something like that. Maybe he gets traded to the Rams if Matthew Stafford steps away. I think that would be perfect. I mean, look at what's going on in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and that very similar scheme right now with Sam Darnold. Like, some teams, and I'll say this as a Bears fan, some teams understand offense. Like, it looks like the Rams, the Vikings, like the Buccaneers. It looks like these teams, minus last week with the Buccaneers, but it looks like these teams know how to scheme up their quarterback and put them in good situations. And that's exactly what Bryce Young needs. He like just didn't have a chance in Carolina, I don't think.
Yeah, I hopped on the lab too just to see what some recent Bryce Young trades were going down. So for your audience who doesn't know, I mean, I got JCap at South Harmon put together this incredible tool for sleeper. Any league that I'm in and anybody that I play with, it'll pull up all the trades that they made. So I'm in 60 leagues, and you can do the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You understand it's pulling a ton of trades, like real trades in leagues. Bryce Young is out here, getting traded for a third, 2/3. I assume if I'm on a rebuilding team, I could trade Derek Carr straight up for Bryce Young. Derek Carr we just wrote him off before the season started, and then we were pleasantly surprised, and now he's back to being a pumpkin. This is the kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, Sam Darnold's a good one. Like, you got a Sam Darnold. Like, the guy getting Bryce Young is also getting a third. Like, you're getting Bryce Young and a third for Sam Darnold at this point. This is where his value is. And if I'm doing long-term projecting, I like the way Sam Darnold's playing, but how certain are you that he's like a really good quarterback when he moves on from Minnesota in the system to somewhere else? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So if I'm a rebuilding team, like, you can take my Sam Darnold. Enjoy, buddy. I'll also take your third just as a little bit of insurance, which I'll use for something else. But his price is cheap, and I think it's getting cheaper by the game that Andy Dalton comes out and throws for 300 yards and throws touchdowns all over the place.
Yeah. So one more player. Maybe we'll have time for another one. I saw another one in the chat, but this player, pretty surprising start. I was pretty bullish before the season, but he's even exceeded my expectations to this point. What are you doing with James Cook?
If there's ever been a hold for me, it's going to be James Cook, and it's only for this reason. Now, was bullish on James Cook, and I love the start that you've seen, and you feel vindicated. but you're also looking at a player that does have some question marks, like we do. I mean, it's not ideal size. I'm not saying he can't hold up all season, but at some point it feels like he's going to get banged up or he's going to have a couple bad games and the market's going to collapse on him. It just hasn't reached high enough for me to signal like, oh, I need to get off James Cook right now. Like it's right in that mid zone where I'm like, okay, he's surprisingly moved up. I feel good about this, but I'm not exactly ready just to cut all my priors about how much I love James Cook coming into the season and sell. And I definitely he's moved up high enough where it's I can't go buy any more James Cook. Like I can't make that risk. The draft capital that's going to cost you to go get James Cook or the assets you're going to have to send back is going to be pretty pricey at this point. So love what I see. He just kind of falls into that hold category where I'm like, if I got him, great. I did a good thing. All right, let me enjoy it while I have it. If he comes out and he explodes like next week and all of a sudden we're talking about him as, approaching top 5 dynasty RB territory, then all right, the radar's up. All right, I'm going to think about doing some tearing down, getting some draft capital back and getting another running back. Like, I don't know if you want to buy into Alvin Kamara or you want to buy into Kenneth Walker coming off the injury, something along those lines. I think that'd be the play down the road. But for now, just enjoy it, wait and see, and we'll kind of ride it out and have fun talking about letting James cook.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna sell James Cook, it's gonna have to be for somebody who's capable of delivering you a championship. I think if you're a true rebuilding team, like no chance this year, you're wishful thinking next year, I'd be looking to ship James Cook about as fast as I can. Because right now he's one of the biggest outliers in fantasy football right now. 20 fantasy points per game is 6th among running backs. He's only 22nd in weighted opportunities per game, 22nd in weighted opportunities per game. And his expected fantasy points is 21st amongst running backs per player profiler. So a bit of a discrepancy there. The 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games helps. Not necessarily saying that he's going to rank, 21st by the end of the season, but there is, a little bit of a mismatch between his efficiency and his production. And his expected production. He is running hot. And if you're a true rebuild team, you take advantage of somebody who's willing to jump the gun and sees, the 3 touchdown game and says, I want James Cook on my contending team. All right, sell at peak value because Cook is rising and he's getting close to just about where he's probably going to peak in value when you take a look at the RB landscape. So, I mean, rebuilding team, I'm putting him on the block. I'm seeing what I can get. Contending team, I mean, yeah, if I'm going to tear down, it's got to be someone like Kamara. Even Aaron Jones is scary because like he's RB10, but this is a 3-game sample. So like I can't as a contending team in good conscience tear down from James Cook to Aaron Jones quite yet with some certainty there. So it's a tough market for James Cook. So I lean mostly hold unless I'm a true rebuild.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I think you enjoy the ride with James Cook. Maybe you put him on the block to see if somebody will overpay for him. The name that comes to my mind, at least who I would prefer in a tier down, would be somebody like David Montgomery. I wouldn't mind Kamara either. But like I just, as we'll discuss a little bit later, and Matt Babich knows, the whole, everybody who watches this knows my affinity for David Montgomery. But yeah, I completely agree. This is nothing crazy here. I don't have much to add to that. I do want to sneak in one more player because I think, the tight ends are frustrating anyway, and we could go rapid fire with this if we want to. Somebody brought up Mark Andrews in the chat, and the usage with him is a little bit startling, but I do want to say, just as a PSA, the final score is not indicative of how that game really went. The Ravens throttled it down big time. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if Mark Andrews is still battling, injuries or his body's not feeling right, but like this usage is pretty startling. So what are you doing with Mark Andrews right now?
I have never felt more vindicated about my stance I started taking towards the end of last year and into the whole offseason where I just don't care about the tight end position at all. I mean, people would point out, well, and 2.0 tight end premium leagues, they matter. And me and Coop went back and forth about this. I didn't want any of them, none of them. And I think this year has been most vindicating because Mark Andrews still held dynasty value coming in. You guys had the Kyle Pitts, Trey McBride. I love Sam Laporta to death. He's an Iowa dude. Like I love my Iowa tight ends. But in the same sense, if people were going to give me first and a second plus, two firsts for any of these tight ends, like these were automatic sells for the simple reason that tight ends as a whole, the position has always kind of been garbage, and it's especially garbage this year. And these no names, these nobodies come out and are giving you similar production. Now, is it ever going to be what Travis Kelce was doing in his heyday? No, like that's not going to happen. But can you get 60-70% of Travis Kelce in his heyday production from Hunter Henry? And if you're just looking relative to the rest of the position for this year, you're going not Travis Kelce, yes, but whoever the number one tight end is, which just happens to be Dallas Goedert, who people were writing off before the season started. The answer is an emphatic yes. It's an emphatic yes. So I would say with Mark Andrews, does it feel terrible to sell a guy to kind of kick him when he's down? Yeah, it feels like you're selling at the lowest point. But just do it. Just do it. If somebody's gonna offer you the gift of like, I'll give you a decent second for Mark Andrews because I still believe he can turn it around or whatever they want, go for it. Go for it. Take that second round pick, use it to actually get a position that matters on your team, and then just go pick up some trash can tight end off the waiver wire, which probably exists. And all of a sudden you'll look up and you go, dang, Jonnu Smith was just hanging out there. Like, this is a guy in Warpwise who's a top 15 tight end on the year so far. Like, this is what I'm going to ride, and this is what I'm going to start on a weekly basis. Colby Parkinson, waiver wire ad after week one where people are like, oh, yeah, he actually is playing. This is the kind of like tight end rooms that I always want to have. I want to have those trash heap ones. And I get to enjoy the success of starting Colby Parkinson when he actually has a good game because I had no other choice. He's not just riding my bench and it's a wait and see. I have no other choice. I'm starting Colby Parkinson every single week because this is the best I can do. And a lot of these teams I see here around my dynasty leagues who are sitting 3-0, who've been dominating, you go look at their tight end room and you're like, they dodged every bullet. Like they forced themselves to start a trash can and they're reaping all the rewards. And everybody who was out there, even in those start two tight end leagues with a heavy tight end premium, who are like, I got Trey McBride and Kyle Pitts and I'm going to dominate everybody on a weekly basis. Most of those teams are sitting 0-3 and they're hating their life right now. And they're going, do I sell? Do I sell? I say with the tight end position, especially Mark Andrews, like, good. Take him off my hands. I will just re-roll this into something that matters later down the road.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge to find something we all disagree on apparently in this episode, but echoing the sentiments, it's you got to be able to not take the hopium in these cases. Like, once you have to do like 3 or 4 excuses for a player, like in one breath, that's when you got to really take a look in the mirror. Like, he was in a car accident right before training camp, and the Ravens have been in wonky game scripts, and there's like once you just keep adding all these things, and the more excuses you have, the less likely, it is that Mark Andrews ends up going back to that elite form. And he was coming off a tightrope surgery, last year. So, it's pretty clear to me that Andrews isn't going to be Andrews for this year. And really we start getting into, age 30, I believe, for Mark Andrews next year. And it gets really tough to, start picturing that upside case when you got, guys in the market where it's even more affordable probably to go out and get, Evan Ingram, who's been hurt, or David Njoku, who's been hurt, would rather tear down to one of those guys if someone believes in Andrews and is sick and tired of, one of those two not playing any games.
Yeah, I guess I disagree slightly, and I don't disagree that he's a hold or a sell. But I'm just gonna wait and just hope that he has a big game. And then that's where I'm gonna put him on the trade block because it does kind of hurt my soul. But you said second, I'm like, man, like that feels like, man, I don't want to give him away for that. But then you look him up on Keep Trade Cut, and I get it. Keep Trade Cut's not tight end premium. He's player 137 right now. He's just totally plummeted, and like tight end 10 is like, we've there've probably been like 4 or 5 different players to finish inside the top 10 tight ends, like the Zach Ertz of the world. You talked about it, Colby Parkinson, Noah Fant, like these types that are way cheaper and are likely gonna be as productive this season. So, and like Gogo Jin is saying, they have Isaiah Likely too on the team, who I'm not saying every week he's gonna be a elite producer like he was in week 1, but it is a factor now in the Mark Andrews discussion.